Dr. J.C. King. Now, the promise included the headings of personal, like background of new students and faculty, as others see us, like superlatives, athletics, the promise, entertainment, plays, musical, dramatic entertainment, and ads. Now, various other headings are present and change from year to year. St. Albans School quickly gained a reputation for being a rough and competitive school where bullying was encouraged, like I said earlier, and many of the boys were, quote-unquote, lost during the years of operation. These lost boys are enshrined in the promise with a picture and written snapshot of the boy's character. One such boy, Irving Malone, is thus featured in the 1895 to 1896 issue of the promise. Despite the 113 to 124 year age difference between them and the boys of today, they still have a few things in common. The most obvious, of course, is sports. And of course, you can't forget the girls. Apparently, boys in 1904 preferred brunettes. I thought that was interesting.
Interesting.
You're out.
I am out.
You're out.
I am definitely out. I've been a brunette once and I hated it.
You're not naturally a brunette.
I am not. I'm definitely a strawberry blonde.
Yes. Now, while no official reports record harm or death, more than one suicide is believed to have occurred on the school grounds. The school closed its doors in 1911 and sat vacant until 1916, when Dr. J.C. King reopened the facility as a home for the mentally disabled. The newly formed sanatorium was considered advanced at the time, when the treatment of mentally ill was often barbaric and inhumane. However, even this quote-unquote superior care included experimental procedures and questionable treatments like insulin coma therapy, electroconvulsive therapy, and hydroshock therapy. Now, these practices resulted in significant fatalities, alongside multiple documented suicides. I'm going to read a couple things. I know I don't find them hard to listen to, but maybe somebody will. This is just a fair warning. They're really not that bad, but I just thought I'd let people know. Insulin shock therapy, or insulin coma therapy, was a form of psychiatric treatment in which patients were repeatedly injected with large doses of insulin in order to produce daily comas over several weeks. It was introduced in 1927 by Austrian-American psychiatrist Manfred Sackel, used extensively in the 1940s and 1950s, mainly for schizophrenia, before falling out of favor and being replaced by neuroleptic drugs in the 1960s. Insulin comas.
Dude.
I can't, I don't even know what to say about that. That is brutal.
So they're like, okay, for schizophrenic people, we'll just put them in comas. It's fine.
Yeah, they're like, we'll just put them down. And I mean, I just couldn't even imagine. I don't even know what to think about that. It is so off the wall. Electroconvulsive therapy, also known as ECT, is a psychiatric treatment where a generalized seizure is electrically induced to manage refractory mental disorders. Typically, 70 to 120 volts are applied externally to the patient's head, resulting in approximately 800 milliamperes of direct current passing through the brain, of a duration of about 100 milliseconds to 6 seconds long, either from temple to temple or bilateral ECT, or from front to back of one side of the head, also known as unilateral ECT.
Listen, I have someone with epilepsy in my family.
Yes, you do.
And every time that they had a seizure, it was literally like a week. They would be just down and out, right? Because it takes a lot out of you. So they're basically making people have seizures.
Oh, this will get you up and going if you fall out.
By doing this shock therapy. But like, so afterwards when they're down and out from, from having that episode or whatever, what do they think they're, need it again?
I have no idea.
Like, what?
I think it was all very experimental. I don't even think they really knew what they were doing. They were just doing it.
They're like, we'll just try this.
And hydrotherapy is exposing patients to baths or showers of warm water for an extended period of time. And often it had a calming effect on them. Now, for this reason, mental hospitals use hydrotherapy as a tool for treating mental illness. However, often they would also use freezing ice cold water.
Ugh, here we go again.
Always.
Again.
This one always comes back. That's all I have on that. I mean, it is. Use your imagination.
Yeah.
Listen to our other episode. Yeah, they would freeze you out.
Most of these places, like even some of the prisons we've done, they all do this, like either stick them out in the freezing cold while they're wet or ice baths or...
Oh, they were playing mad scientists back then.
Crazy.
Despite this facility thrived for many years, growing to become a fully recognized hospital by the 1960s. By the 1990s, the services at St. Albans were transferred to another location at the hospital and was closed for good. Today, St. Albans operates as an historical site, offering tours that recount the building's long history and significance as one of the area's oldest structures. However, reminders of St. Albans' past await at every turn, from the rooftop garden with mesh that prevented patients from jumping to the electroshock therapy room where patients were treated, often to their detriment.
Quote unquote, treated.
It is quoted, actually.
I figured.
But what draws many people to the building are the well-documented reports of paranormal activity. Visitors can explore places like the locker room, which holds a chair often seen rocking by itself. The suicide bathroom, where at least 4 suicides took place over the years. In the basement, bowling alley, said to house the spirit of a young girl, possibly the daughter of a patient who died at the hospital. Other reports claim that a strange mist appears in the bowling alley with the mention of Gina Renee Hall, a young woman who was brutally murdered near the hospital in 1980, the year I was born. In the summer of 1980, an 18-year-old college freshman went out for the night to dance, but never made it back home. Gina Renee Hall was a beloved daughter and sister and member of the small-town community that has never stopped grieving for her and never stopped looking for her remains. Gina's case was the first no-body conviction in the state of Virginia.
Wow.
But even 40 years later, there was an open file and active investigation into the search for her remains. Her family, law enforcement, and locals still wanted to bring Gina home for a proper burial. So for 40 years, they never found anything of this girl.
Like, listen.
Nothing. They found nothing.
That is crazy. And I listen to a lot of true crime stuff. And that no body conviction, that's a big deal.
It's hard to do.
It's a very, very big deal. And most states didn't do them at all for a very long time.
It's very hard to convict somebody without the hard evidence.
Yeah. Wow.
But this one went on for 40 years. They did get a conviction, though.
Still sad.
It is sad, but they got the guy, and we're going to hear a little article about this.
Okay.
This article is from July 13th of 2020, and this came from WDBJ7.com. And this was kind of like a local news article I found. Mm-hmm. It's been 40 years since Gina Renee Hall was murdered in Pulaski County. Her murderer, Stephen Epperly, was convicted, but a body was never found. Within the last few months, Gina's older sister, Diana Hall Bodmer, with the help of a forensic anthropologist out of Tennessee, has found some of Gina's DNA and remains. In 2016, Bodmer said a farmer's grandson reported to the Radford Police Department that his family had held a secret since 1980. He said his grandfather had witnessed what he believed to be 2 men dismembering a body in Meadow Creek, and they were driving a white van, and he believed the woman to be Gina Hall. And that's what sparked her journey for Gina's body. Quote, "And that's when the miracles began. That's when the truth came unveiled. That's when the pieces of the puzzle started showing up and just started fitting together, and now I have the truth. It's like if I need something or I need another piece of the puzzle, it comes." Unquote. Despite a conviction for murder, she still wants closure. That's why last year, a vigil for Gina brought a new sense of hope. Diana was introduced to Dr. Arpad Voss, a forensic anthropologist who had invented an instrument to detect DNA buried beneath the surface. Since then, Gina's remains have been discovered across 8 locations throughout the New River Valley using that device. Quote, "What we would do is take each one of those locations and start zeroing in by the miles. And I would just pull over and let him out and let him just scan until he narrowed in right until the feet, right to be very to be the very location, unquote, said Bodmer. They found Gina's DNA on top of Draper Mountain at a lake house on Claytor Lake off Hazel Hollow Road along Meadow Creek. And they found part of one of Gina's bones at Epperle's former hunting grounds. Bodmer says some of the locations were on their radar in 2016, but not all of them. Quote, when people come to understand what this instrument can do, it's a world changer. That's what I like to often share. Just imagine, we are not just working cold cases, but we are trying to find children that have gone missing. This is huge, unquote, said Bodmer.
Wow. Now,
this is where things get interesting, and this is actually the part of why I threw this article in. And I'll build off of it.
Okay.
Not only did the instrument hit on Gina's DNA, but it also hit on another, Angela Radar's. Ms. Radar went missing from Roanoke in 1977, and back then they thought she was just a runaway teen, and that's where it stopped, until Diana met with the Radar family. Quote, do we have proof? No, but we have an instrument that we put in a sample of Angela from her family, and we find her on a ridge near the same valley, and we find her in a different location that we are currently investigating, and we find her at the creek. That tells me we've got more victims, and we've only checked Gina and Angela's, unquote,
wow,
said Bodmer. Bodmer said she won't stop until she excavates all 8 of the locations and maybe finally find all the pieces to this decades-long puzzle. Quote, sometimes truth just sets your heart free. You just need truth no matter how bad it is, unquote. Now, I wanted to throw that article in to show that there may have been more bodies killed closely by or even on the property. I haven't read or found anything saying this, but I do believe it could be more of a serial killer scenario. Mm-hmm. Like, once I read that part, I was like, well, how many more people could have possibly been killed here?
Right.
That weren't even patients at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
We know, or we believe we know, that can cause a spirit to linger. So once I read that, my theory is that with a lot more possible people being murdered in this location, mm-hmm. that maybe it left a lot more behind than what people thought would be there.
Right. And it's maybe not all just patients or
yeah,
boys or what have you, mm-hmm. from the actual building.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Walking through the eerie, graffiti-covered halls and crumbling doorways, St. Albans virtually hums with history and speculation. It's easy to imagine the horrors that patients may have experienced in this quote-unquote advanced treatment facility. On the website, onlyinyourstate.com, where I got most of this information, there's a video where they provide a brief tour of the facility and interviews with St. Albans staff, many of whom have encountered spirits in ghostly forms themselves. Now, according to paranormal investigators and the occasional curious visitor, not every patient seems to have left the building. St. Albans is supposedly among the most active paranormal location on the East Coast and possibly in the world. Given the number of wrongful deaths that occurred within, it's easy to imagine why this would become a ghostly hangout spot. People have even reported seeing everything from full-bodied apparitions, shadow figures, and even levitating objects while exploring the abandoned building. Others claim to hear voices or even feel fleeting physical contact with unseen beings. But rest assured that if you decide to enter those doors and go looking for things, St. Albans will surely show you the things in which you may not be ready for. With an impressive list of haunting activities, it's no wonder why so many people visit St. Albans Sanatorium.
That's good. Like I said, like this wasn't ever really like a big, huge place, especially until recently. I would say that I've been seeing, in paranormal teams and things going there to investigate stuff. So there wasn't like a whole lot that I knew about this place.
I'm going to give a shout out to a really old paranormal thing. I've been into the paranormal. The first time I really got into it was, I guess, right at the beginning of Ghost Hunters, because it blew it wide open for me. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this was like a big thing.
Yeah. And
boom, I was hooked. But what really set the hook in for me was this this series of videos that